Part of learning to support students in the secondary educational environment is to learn the skill of universal design within the secondary classroom and within the transition services domain. We have to think about how we provide equitable services that are universally planned for all learners. So I'm going to start this series on UDL and secondary services out by providing equitable transition opportunities through universal design for learning methods. First, before we get into the heart of this, I'd like you to use your visualization skills, and I'd like you to think about building a roller coaster. And you're going to build not only just a roller coaster, but a differentiated roller coaster. And in this roller coaster system and everything about this park and how it's set up, you're going to plan for individuals with physical disabilities. You're going to plan for individuals who maybe do not read, illiterate individuals. You're going to plan for individuals with language needs. Maybe either they speak a different language or maybe they don't speak at all. And you're also going to plan for individuals with sensory needs. So I want you to take just a couple minutes, pause the video if you need to, and really think about what would that look like to you if you were to create this roller coaster. And then I want you to reflect on how you developed this plan and how you explored the options that were available to you. And I want you to think about how your design might be different from your peers in this class. How does what you plan look different? What types of modifications did you suggest? How would you change that roller coaster to make it accessible for all of those individuals? How many modifications overall did you suggest? Did you have a few or did you have quite a few? Is it easy to generate those ideas? Was that a difficult process? I've done this activity with multiple teachers, and one of the key things that they always tell me is it was way more difficult than I thought it would be. And that's going to lead us to something in the next couple slides about planning. What were some of your thought processes when you created solutions and you came up to them? How did you get there? Did you just start with one idea and the solution automatically arose? Or did you have to take multiple steps to get there? And I want you to think about, would it be easier to incorporate the ideas generated when the building was built? Or would it be easier to go in and make the alterations later when the roller coasters are already going and now you need to make those modifications? Does this require a plan to make it accessible for all? Was this something that could just be planned on the spot, or did you have to take some time in order to create your roller coaster? All of these questions help us understand why we have to be intentional about universally designed classrooms and transition supports in our secondary level. We have to have a focus that builds expert learning for every single student that we have. We have to switch our thinking from a yes, but this is the challenge thinking to a yes, and we can do this thinking. When we make that shift of our thinking process, we realize that all learners need to know their goals, that every learner needs to have access to their goals. We also know that in order to do that, we have to be intentional and we have to have flexible options for all students to use. That classroom that you're building may not look the same for absolutely everyone. And the assignment that you're supporting may not look the same. And that transition work-based learning may look very different and the structure may change from person to person. Students need to access resources and have a universally designed setting from the beginning of an experience. And so a lot of times we don't think about that planning process prior, but we have to make sure we're intentional. And we have to make sure that students are able to internalize their own learning and that they lead the process and activities within. And really, to drive home the importance of this, I want you to follow a 4-step process that Marzano offers to build high expectations for every learner. Because the key to universally designed classrooms in secondary settings is having high expectations. We don't track students into classrooms. We don't assume that students shouldn't do a work-based learning because it doesn't fit their skill level. We have to make sure that everybody has highest expectations and can achieve the dignity of risk. In order to do that, I want you to think through how to identify a student that you might need to support. So think of someone that you maybe currently have some low expectations for. And I'm not making any judgments. I'm just asking you to think about someone who maybe you use that yes, but thinking, where you were like, yes, but you know, their hearing is impaired, so I don't know that we could have them be a receptionist. Or yes, but you know, they really struggle with multiplication, so I don't know that they can be enrolled in algebra. So think about a student who we maybe have lower expectations for. Then I want you to think of a student who you have high expectations for. Maybe they're a gifted student. Maybe there's someone that you would automatically just place out on a work site without any second thought. And compare those two in your mind and the skills that they hold and their abilities that they hold. Then I would like you to identify any differential treatment between these students that you think may occur in our schools currently. What are the things that happen to students in that transition age? Do we put them into tracked classes? Do we put them into specific classes because we think that those classes would fit them, or maybe our teachers are more kind in those classes? But think about how we differentiate that treatment right now. And then I want you to think about if you were to create a plan to teach them both with high expectations, but the supports were varied, could they achieve the highest levels and expectations that we would set upon them? Because that's what universal design is about, is ensuring that all students have the dignity to risk and that they are given high expectations. So we have to remember that UDL is way more than just differentiation. It's way more than modifying the curriculum. It is truly about preparing an equitable accessed secondary educational system through universally designed methods. And we know that some students will struggle. We know that we have to offer them a productive struggle. And in that productive struggle, which is the dignity of risk, we have to challenge the weaknesses of the students rather than overwhelm them. And universal design in transition and secondary services provides that. We set the environment up to make it successful for them. We want to make sure they do not feel failure, but at the same time, we want to give them a little bit of risk and give them a productive struggle. We need to be productive rather than frustrating. So instead of modifying or differentiating our curriculum, we need to set it up from the beginning so that the success is achieved in the beginning, as opposed to allowing them to move through a class or to move through work-based learning frustrated, and then we come in and differentiate that support. We need to allow students to think through their processes and really delve deeply. There is an amazing resource, which I'll give you just a quick view into, and I will provide this link within the course as well. But there is an amazing resource that really helps guide you through it. So you will see that this resource gives you specific steps, specific universal design components in the multiple means of representation and that teaching moment. Then you also have specific steps in the multiple means of action and expression of how they're able to do things. How are they able to get it out? And then also multiple means of engagement. How do we get students to interact with the learning material? That's all part of the productive struggle. And it's way more than differentiation. It goes steps and bounds above because it's a universally designed system that is planned before. And so when we talk universal design for learning, we have to remember that it's a way of thinking about teaching at a universal level, meaning that everyone can access it. It goes far above differentiation because we're including every learner in that classroom. Because I would like to argue that at that secondary level, and I've said this multiple times, that many students in special education might even be lucky because they get transition services. So universal design in transition is about ensuring that every student, regardless of if they have a disability or who they are, has access to learning about transition and learning about what life is like after high school. So it's a universal level of education. The approach offers flexibility in the methods which are used to help students access the curriculum. And so a lot of the methods that we use, so you're going to notice it's not just the differentiation or the curriculum. It's about the methods that are used to access the curriculum. That's the key difference between that differentiation, and is because all students are able to access it and all students have access to it. And then the secondary level student doesn't feel different in comparison to their peers. And that's a side effect, a positive side effect of universal design for learning. And then in lesson planning, the key there is we follow the approach to reach and teach all learners. That means we're intentional about it. That when we set out to plan and write that transition plan and to do that TGAP process and to identify and connect goals and education, that it's intentional. Everything that we do in our environment becomes intentional, from the representation and the teaching to students, from the multiple means of engagement, how we get them to interact with the environment, whether it's a work-based learning or whether it's taking a test, whether it's preparing for college. How do we get them to engage? And then multiple means of expression. How do we get them to be able to share their learning? A lot of colleges across the nation are adopting a universally designed system. And so hopefully those three components will lead to independence. And if we can bring that in at the secondary level in universally designed classrooms, then students will be prepared as they leave high school. So that is just an introductory section of our universal design for learning. Stay tuned for a couple more sessions on specific methods that you might use at the high school level and secondary high school level for transition support.